Garland Nixon here, and hanging out with Sjoerd de Groot. They've got a great event going on, well, where they'll be pushing back against the warmongers, the imperialists, the people that are trying to screw over the working class. Let's talk. Hello. Hey, everybody. Peoples for Peace. That's Peoples for Peace. Guess what? There's a great demonstration going on, a rally. It's the program Peace demonstration. It's during the NATO summit. How about this? June 24th and 25th. Location is at The Hague. You're going to walk in at 11. It starts at 12. You got Peoples for Peace, Veterans Group NL, World Anti-Imperialist Platform, Heart for Freedom, Platform for Peace and Solidarity, Netherlands in Revolt. We got Richard Medhurst is going to be there. Hey, our own beloved Jody Barr is going to be there. Man, you talk about good times, good times, good times. We really enjoy when we get a chance to fight back against the warmongers. I got my main man, Sjoerd de Groot, here. And let me ask you something. To get to start off with this, because, you know, everybody's talking about what is happening, and it's like the U.S. and Israel. But when you look at this and you see, well, wait a minute, the UK's ships and planes are involved. France says, oh, Spain, oh, wait a minute, Germany. And you realize something. It's NATO. They're not saying that it's NATO, but it's always NATO. In Libya, it's NATO. It's always NATO up to doing these things. So I think it's fantastic that you all are pushing against the NATO summit. And people who are upset about what's happening right now in occupied Palestine, people who are angry right now about what's happening with the war of aggression against Iran, and just that their own societies are being put at risk. Their own, you know, their children are being put at risk. The world is being put at risk. This is not the United States and Israel. This is NATO. This is the empire as a whole. And that's why what you all are doing is so important, because you're pushing back against this empire. Your thoughts, Sjoerd de Groot.
Yeah, so indeed, Israel is not officially part of NATO, but they're always very much involved with NATO exercises. I believe they are formally a NATO partner. And much of the military technology, military software used by NATO is produced by Israel. So there's much entanglement in that regard as well. And if you go even deeper, NATO in itself is not an entity that has any agency. It's a tool, and it's a tool that is placed in the same toolbox where you find the tool that's called Israel, because both are tools of U.S. imperialism. I mean, if you look at where Israel is located, its geopolitical situation, how it came about, it's both its creation and its continued existence are completely dependent on the United States, and to a lesser extent on Europe. So in such a relationship, there is no sense, very similar to Ukraine, in speaking of a sovereign country that has any agency. Because if one of the two parties walks away from the other one, the other one's in trouble, and it's not Israel that has the option to walk away. So viewing Israel as a sort of actor that acts independently of the United States, and the same goes for NATO, is basically to participate in a farce, because it's a geopolitical tool of the United States.
So let's talk about this event. It is more important now than ever what's going on. Go to Peoples for Peace and check it out. They've got all that's going on. June 25th, 24th, and 25th, The Hague. Talk about your event, what's happening there, what do people need to know, how can they participate, on and on.
Yeah, so on both days of the summit, we will organize a day-long protest on the biggest patch of grass in The Hague, which is a traditional protest location. And originally we had the plan to have a program with speakers, music, and then hold a march to the World Forum, which is the building where the summit is held. But the Hague police, which is notorious for being quite repressive towards protesters, has decided that they will not allow any mobile demonstrations. So we've been trying to see what we can do about this, but at, at the end of the day, we also have a responsibility towards the people who attend our protests. And if we cannot guarantee their safety, then we shouldn't do it. So we are not going to go and tell people to basically get beaten up by the police. So unfortunately, due to restrictions which we are forced to accept, there will not be a march, but instead we have 2 days from 12 until 6 with a very full program with a lot of interesting speakers, both Dutch and international, as you just highlighted, and a lot of musical acts. And one of them that I want to shout out, which is very interesting, is a band called Group Yorum, and it's a leftist anti-imperialist band from Turkey. They were founded back in the 1980s, but they are very critical of the Turkish government and back then the Turkish military regime. Many of their members and former members have been in prison, have been tortured in prison, have been on hunger strike, and I believe some of them have even died in prison. Not recently, but I believe back in the 1980s. So these people are not cowards. These people are in it for the long haul, and they are consistently against imperialism. And well, we have the honor of hosting them on the first day of our protest.
Well, that's fantastic. You all are doing great work. Don't forget June 24th and 25th. And something that's interesting now, and that is to see the treachery of imperialism, to see the treachery of NATO. The Ukrainians, they support the most extreme, most vile neo-Nazi elements in that society. They're throw those people at the Russians in the meat grinder for the last 3 years. And now they got a new war and they're like, oh, you know what? The Ukraine war, that's so last week. We're tired of that. And now they're just going to leave the Ukrainians and they're going to get pulverized. They were always going to get pulverized. The Russians have no choice. In my opinion, if NATO comes to your doorstep, you have to defend yourself. That is my opinion. People may disagree. But now they're going to walk away and they're going to leave the Ukrainians. And you know who should wake up? The Ukrainians. They should wake up to realize that they've been nothing but cannon fodder for NATO and for the empire.
Well, they've lost half their population, most of them due to migration, and still a significant percentage due to being killed over the last 3 years. So, yeah, if this is what you call supporting one's country, in this case, Ukraine, I wouldn't want that kind of support for my country. And that's exactly a major reason why I am organizing this protest, because you can see down the line what the point is. We're being told that Russia is going to invade Europe next. There's, I believe, Secretary General Mark Rutte last week said that within 5 years, Russia can be ready to attack NATO again. Or attack NATO next, which, I mean, it's kind of a farcical statement, because if you take it literally, they can be ready to attack NATO at any time, because he didn't say attack successfully. I mean, they can attack. I mean, Belgium can attack Germany right now. It's not going to work out very well militarily, but there is no. So rhetoric or semantically, he is not wrong, but this propaganda is being used to ultimately justify, I'm very much afraid, pulling us into a bigger war in which, as we all know, Europe will be the battlefield. Because if you just look at a map, if two powers fight, the space in between will be the battlefield. And right now, Ukraine is the space in between. But if the United States and Russia fight, then Europe will be the space in between. And I don't think we'll see trenches. I'm afraid that we will see nukes, and it will be over very quickly. So yeah, this is the main reason why we're organizing this. And just yesterday, in another program, I mentioned uh, a lot of different groups who normally have the same aims as we do. They reject working with us because we don't reject working with the right, as I believe we've talked about before. And there's this very well put joke by Jimmy Dore, which he said at the Rage Against the War Machines protest, where he said, "Sure, I want to stop a nuclear war, but not with those people." And that's exactly the kind of sentiment we're seeing um, all the time right now. Um, just a number of speakers have cancelled. Someone who early on said that he would be willing to speak. He said just today. He told me we don't see the fight against racism and a war separately, and we declare that party to be racist. Which I mean, I wouldn't really want to argue that there's not racist ideas floating around there, of course, but when the nukes are flying, there sure is a distinction between war and racism. So yeah, those are some issues we're running into, which I believe much of the Western anti-war movement is running into.
And I feel like this. I feel like that is what the ruling elite want. You know, I remember the Rage Against the War Machine, and we had groups say no because one of your speakers said something insulting to trans people or something like that, right? But
Mhm.
so what you have is the ruling elite get to take cultural issues and they get to use them to divide us so we can't fight against them. But I see you guys are going to have this. This is for everyone. It's June 24th and 25th. It is at The Hague. You can walk in at 11. It starts at 12. We've got Peoples for Peace and the World Anti-Imperialist Platform, all kinds of great platform for peace and solidarity. Richard Medhurst is going to be there. Jody Barr is going to be there. All kinds of great speakers are going to be there. They're going to have music there. It's actually, look, we've got a program. They're going to have a DJ and video messages, speakers. That's great. And there's day two. You see everything going on. So go to Peoples for Peace. I think it's peoplesforpeace.com. We'll get you there too, won't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And you can find out everything that's going, and you can be a part of that, and you can support it. And to me, what you're seeing now with NATO and why it's more important, another reason that it's important, and that is in this war. I think I read somewhere that like $500 billion in damage has been done to Israel in this first week, right? They're going to come now. We've got people in our country, people all over Europe who can barely pay their heating bills, or air conditioning bills, energy bills. People who their factory shuts down and they lose their job, etc. And these people are starting another war, and then they're going to come to us and they're saying, "Well, you know what? We have to take more from you so we can buy more tanks and planes. We have to
Yeah.
take more from you so we can rebuild this because it was blown up in Israel." And so it doesn't matter what your ideology is. There's a military component to that, which could cost you your life, but there's an economic component to this also, Sjoerd.
Yeah, this will be very hard to sell. I think it will be harder to sell to the Dutch public than the war in Ukraine, because a recent Pew Research poll found that after surveying, I believe, something like 20 countries on their opinions of Israel, it turned out that in the Netherlands, only 4% of the country has a completely positive view of Israel, about 15% somewhat positive, and 79% has, to one extent or another, a negative view of Israel, which, I mean, 4% is not a very broad basis to support sending all this money and all these weapons. By the way, we are supplying weapons parts for the F-35s as the Netherlands to Israel. At some point, this has to cause trouble, because the party in parliament, which is Geert Wilders' party, the blonde guy, he is the most fanatically pro-Zionist politician in the Netherlands, and even among the supporters of his party, only about a quarter, really support Israel. So this is a major issue for continuing on this path. And right now, it's sort of hidden. It's not something people really think about, that we support this genocide by exporting uh, airplane parts. But when it comes to sending reconstruction aid in terms of basically cash money, and well, if it's going to be like you say, $500 billion, then the share picked up by the Netherlands, if that turns out to be what we have to do, will be significant, and that will be very difficult to explain, I think. But um, yeah, to add on to this debacle, the NATO summit itself, the main item on the agenda is to increase the NATO norm. So previously it was agreed that all countries in NATO should spend 2% of their GDP on defense, which I always found a bit weird, because as you can see in the United States, more money does not equal more army or defense military automatically. I mean, the Pentagon budget loses more money than most countries have as a budget in total anyway. So maybe spending money more effectively is a better idea to improve your military. But okay, only now this agreement was made like 10 years ago, and only now most NATO countries are on this 2% norm. But now they want to throw it up to 5%, which is a ridiculous percentage, because believe even at the height of the Cold War, no country spent this much money on defense. And on top of that, back then we had quite well developed industry before it was all outsourced. So it's very remarkable uh, to talk about defense in terms of in terms of money, especially because it's not even physical money; it's digital money. So you cannot even throw it at your enemy, and of course, money does not transform into physical hardware automatically.
You know, one of the things, and again, it's important, June 24th and 25 at The Hague. The walk-in is at 11. It starts at 12. We're going to have Richard Medhurst as one of the speakers. Jody Barr is going to be one of the speakers. It's going to be great. You know, uh, I think it's important to understand that NATO is a tool of world hegemony, that basically they use the word defense. We want to defend ourselves. They're defending themselves against Russia on Russia's border. They're
Mhm.
defending themselves against Iran by launching a war of aggression, that they use this term defense. But what we really see is the ultimate of imperialism, the ultimate of hegemony, the ultimate of the United States empire saying, Europe and European citizens, you have to sacrifice your life, your family, your economy. You have to sacrifice everything so the United States can continue to be the world's hegemon. And the United States isn't even the world hegemon anymore. They're trying to hold on to something that they have lost, if they ever had it, and they want the people of Europe and other people, but for the all intents and purposes in this argument, the people of Europe to pay the cost and get nothing out of it but deindustrialized and impoverished.
Yeah, these wars are not fought on behalf of our populations, or even on behalf of capital in general, but specifically on behalf of finance capital, because deindustrialization, rising commodity prices, which is a direct result of warfare and sanctions, and disruptions to international trade. These are not good for industry as well. So yeah, this is quite clear, I think. But to get to the issue of calling this all defense, I think if the history books of this period are written, it might well be, if we live to see the day, that this period or this empire will be referred to as the empire of euphemisms, because all those terms that back in the day used to be quite direct, I mean, Department of War, etc., etc., it's now, oh, it's the Department of Defense, except basically all the missions the Department of Defense conducts are in someone else's country, and it's humanitarian intervention, even though we're slaughtering thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of civilians, but it's a humanitarian intervention. In some cases, like if the so-called humanitarian intervention in Venezuela would have materialized, very much against the democratic will of the population. So everything, and you can see this. I think American culture is very much a culture of commerce and of marketing, and that translates into propaganda as well. So you have these sort of this fear mongering about Russian propaganda, um, which is always a bit funny to me um, because of the Soviet Union, because of the history. Russia does not really have a very deep rooted culture of um, being very smart about how you present what you want to sell, whether it's an idea or a product or whatever, because it's never really been part of Russian culture. Whereas in America, this is very much the case. Marketing is everywhere, and the most um, advanced marketing bureaus, which basically turn it into a science, are based in the United States. So this complete control of the narrative is in the hands of America because of or American corporations because of this point. And this is also what Putin referred to in his Tucker Carlson interview, where Tucker Carlson said something along the lines of, if you have the intelligence to prove that the United States um, blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, why don't you present that? Because that will give you a PR victory. And
Oh,
Putin just
absolutely.
basically laughed and said, well, there is no such thing as a PR victory against the United States, so why even bother trying?
Absolutely. You know, I think that right now it is important that, and that, you know, timing is everything. I'm a big believer in time. Once again, we're talking to Sjoerd de Groot for anybody who might just be coming in. This is they've got a peace demonstration during the NATO summit. There's all the times there, right? You can see the time. It's June 24th and 25th. Peoples for Peace, World Anti-Imperialist Platform. Guess what? Richard Medhurst, Jody Barr is going to be there. It's going to be great. You'll love it. You got to be there. You got to be part of it. You know, I think also timing is important. Timing is very, very important. And oftentimes we try to protest and rally and make noise, and people don't, you know, and we shake our fist and we tell people, you got to stand up against these people, you got to fight back, you got to revolt, we got to have uprisings. They're giving us the shaft, and people don't listen, and they just dismiss us, right? I think what's going on now in Ukraine, in Gaza, in Iran, I think that now is a time where people can begin to wake up. And all the work that those of us have been doing to point out to people that they're being basically sacrificed to international finance capital, that's one way to put it, that now there's a time when people might just start to wake up. There's a time where people might start to come together and say, we've got to come together, and we've got to, these uh, billionaires and people in the city of London and Wall Street, they're all standing together for their interest, and we all have to come together for our interest. Your thoughts, Stuart?
Yeah, you can see this going on globally as well. So I mentioned the public attitudes towards Zionism in the Netherlands, which have really shifted from what it has been historically to a dramatic extent. And this is a trend that goes on around the world. So we all know that across the global south, most countries sympathize with the Palestinian cause, and it's basically only in the West where and it's always been the case to some extent or another, where there is substantial support for Zionism. Um, but even the populations of the West on this, to some extent, rather abstract issue, because of course it's an abomination what's going on, but it does not affect our lives in such a direct way that we, as people in the West, experience any results as out of this genocide. But even on an abstract issue, materially, support is shifting away from Zionism and aligning with basically the rest of the world. We're joining the human race, you could say. And when it comes to the current war in Iran as well, you can see that the attitudes towards Iran are, well, surprisingly, at least moderate. So, where in the past, during Operation True Promise One, um, our government officials, our foreign minister, said, "Okay, Israel has a right to defend itself," and then when Iran hit back, they said, "Okay, there should be restraint on both sides." And now European foreign ministers are just saying there should be restraint on both sides because, once again, this is, of course, an Israeli attack. And I think this is a result of Iranian diplomacy, which, if you look at the way they have been going about this, they have never climbed the escalation ladder first. So there's been a lot of people who, for understandable emotional reasons and, well, to some extent tactical reasons as well, have argued for Iran to aggressively bomb Israel early on in this genocide to prevent it from going on. But the issue is that most people in the world do not have such an involved understanding of imperialism. And if Iran were to do that, it would lose the support of the global majority. But now that it has waited until it was struck first and now it is retaliating, there is basically no country in the world, except for a handful, which do not understand why it is right for Iran to strike back after they have been hit. So, this sort of convergence of what is just and how imperialism should be fought and that it should be fought is starting to materialize over the past year. So, if basically since early 2022, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you can see that there have been structural steps towards this direction, where resistance across the global south, um, and solidarity with this resistance has been materializing and crystallizing progressively.
Absolutely. And I think that there's, we're at a critical time. We're at a very dangerous time. But we're at, here's the thing. There's an old union saying, right? My dad was in a union. He was a dock worker. And that is, hard times are fighting times, right? And so, yes, times are difficult. Times are dangerous. But it's also an opportunity for people to learn what NATO is, for people to learn the importance of pushing back, for people to start rallying, for people to give an opportunity. People may want to come there to protest NATO. People may want to come there for, any types of anti-imperialist, anti-war. If you're an anti-war person in general, and you're upset with what's going on, look, what you've got, June 24th and 25 at The Hague. There'll be a walk-in at 11, starts at 12. You can go to peoplesforpeace.com for more information. And of course, as I said, Richard Medhurst and Jody Barr will be there. They're going to have music by various groups, Palestinian hip-hop groups, and all kinds of groups there. There's your program right there. So when you go to peoplesforpeace.com, you see, there we go. They're going to have a lunch break. They're going to have a DJ and video messages, all kinds of great stuff. So it's going to be a wonderful time for you to come together with like-minded people. It's going to be a wonderful time to do good work, to stand up against empire, to stand up for the future, of if you have children or, younger kids, children, babies. Look what's happening in Gaza. Look what's happening all over, where people are getting blown up and killed. Look at the reckless attacks on Russia, reckless attacks on, a nuclear power, attacking their nuclear triad, blowing up trains and killing civilians. NATO has become a reckless death machine, and we have to stand up against it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and of course, you can say you have to stand up against it, but the question then becomes how. And this is something I had a conversation to this extent today as well, where I was describing basically the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict to someone who had zero knowledge of this. And, well, they were shocked because, of course, it's shocking. But the response I got is, okay, what do we do about that? And to stand up to something is an abstract thing. You can say, okay, I stand up. Does that mean liking something on social media? Does it mean signing a petition? By the way, we have a petition. basically sign it. But this is not, of course, something that directly does affect change. And you talked about timing just now, and this is this is a moment where we can actually materially do something. So to speak out at this moment when this NATO summit takes place is a better time to do that than basically any other time of the year, because it's basically bound to be a PR debacle. Because well, Trump has more or less argued that Zelensky should not be present in the past, and he has been invited, so he will likely be there. Trump, there was a question whether he would attend, and I believe now he has said that he will attend. So if you get those two together in the room, you're going to have a PR debacle automatically. It's almost guaranteed. So what they did is Zelensky will not actually be part of the talks, but on the 24th, there will be a state dinner hosted by our king and queen. Very democratic country, okay.
You're right, yeah.
In medieval Europe. No, but and Zelensky will be present there. And on the next day, there will be talks, which is actually part of the NATO summit. And I believe Zelensky, the news is now that he will not attend that. A few weeks ago, Zelensky said that if I am not invited to this NATO summit, that means Russia wins. Which is, I guess, the ramblings of a coke addict who thinks he is the Messiah or something, which I believe is one of the symptoms of excessive coke use. But while this is taking place, of course, all the international media will be present in The Hague. And another group which we have tried to work with, but they said, no, we don't want to work with you because you are not excluding the right. They are organizing a protest the Sunday before, which is, I guess, fine because more people will be able to attend on the day off. But there is no international media present at that time, so it's not as visible to the world as the protesting on the days when the actual summit is taking place. So if we're present in large numbers, if we can really show an international coalition against war, against NATO, against the war drive, in the city where the summit is taking place, on the day when the summit is taking place, before the eyes of the international media, this will have a bigger PR impact than basically signing a petition at any other moment of the year or going to a protest even. Because you're not protesting while the eyes of the world are turned towards what you're doing. So if you have the opportunity to come to The Hague, I guess most of Western Europe, it's a bit of a drive, but you can come and you can make the time, please do so, because it's of historical importance.
All right, let's go over this one more time. I don't know why I even put it down, but let's do this. And that is, somehow I'll get this straight. Oh, there we go. There's a program, Peace Demonstration during the NATO Summit. There you go. And it's June 24th and 25th, 2025. It's at The Hague. The walk-in's 11, starts at 12. We're going to have Peoples for Peace, the World Anti-Imperialist Society, Platform for Peace and Solidarity, Heart for Freedom, all of that good stuff. Richard Medhurst, Jody Barr is going to be there. They're going to have music. They've got 2-day programs. Go to peoplesforpeace.com. Peace and freedom is their goal. And we want to thank you very much for what you're doing. And make sure that you give me a yell after it happens. Are you going to be broadcasting anything from there? Are you going to have any live stuff coming from there? Or
yeah, we're going to set up a live stream, and the idea is that we are basically going to stream it to as many channels as possible.
Let me know. Or do you know? Well, we'll get in touch with me. Send me an email. I'll see if let's see if we can figure out how we can. I'd love to stream it on my channel if possible.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you very much. And everybody, go to peoplesforpeace.com, peoplesforpeace.com for more information about this. And of course, follow me on Rockfin and Rumble and Patreon and other all this stuff. You see everything going across the bottom. But the most important thing the most critical thing is that you recognize that the people in the chat, the people that are watching this, the people that will be watching it later, you are critical when it comes to alternative media. You're the people that make this thing happen. Share this on all your social media platforms. There's like been over 300 people watching. Please, all 300 and some, make sure that you share this on all your social media platforms, particularly those people in Europe. If you're in Europe, if you're in the Netherlands, if you're anywhere around Europe, if you're in a NATO country, make sure you share this so that people in the NATO countries, particularly, that we all really have a stake in the game, because nuclear war means the end for all of us. Make sure that you share it with everyone and try to get the word out. Thanks a lot. We're out.